So I'd like to start by introducing a concept about our thoughts, because normally our thoughts are not something we give a great deal of thought to. We're aware that we've got thoughts going on inside our heads most of the time, and they may or may not be connected with our actions. But people who make the effort or train themselves, if you like, to observe their own thoughts and to form their own thoughts more consciously, start to become aware that their thoughts are as real as their actions, if not more real, because we could say that it's the thoughts which create the actions, which are the cause of the actions. And this is the concept that I'd like to stay with for this evening's class. This idea that before each action that we perform with the body, there is a thought that is a very, very real entity in its own right. And that what happens with the body is just an expression of that thought. This changes our relationship to the positions. It gives us a freer feeling. It actually can have the effect of softening the body, of softening the tensions, of making you more flexible ultimately. So I'd like to start with an exercise called wings, where the thought is the thought of a shape. The shape is like this, great big arc that goes around the body. And we trace the arc with our hands. I don't know if you both know this position, this exercise, but I'll just demonstrate it first. What the important thing is the thought. The thought is of the arc. The movement only comes as an expression of that, but we can think and feel with our hands that arc in a very, very clear way. We can do it a few times. Okay, just come into this forward bend to start with, bending forwards like this, just to pause, allow the backs of your legs to stretch, allow the spine to lengthen, and allow the breath to flow freely. Then come right up into the standing position, taking the arms above the head. And now create your thought. The thought, which is a very real being, is of an arc around the body. You can touch that arc with your hands. Keep the hands quite wide apart, breath flowing. Remaining aware of the thought of that arc shape. Then relax the hands, swing right the way up to the standing position. We'll do the exercise a few times. Keep the breath flowing. Think of the arc shape. Picture it in your mind. The thought is a very real being. Touch that thought arc with your hands, right the way down. Let the breath flow. Stay with that thought. Relax the hands, come right the way back up again. Free breath. Think the thought. Touch that thought arc. Smoothly all the way down. Always keeping the breath absolutely free, changing in whatever way it needs to. Stay with the thought. Relax the hands, come right the way back up. Let's do it one final time. We think that wide thought arc around us. Very clear image. We touch that form consciously with our hands. Remain with the thought. And then relax the hands. Come right the way back up again. Free breath. Just take the hands by your sides. Just pause for a moment and stay with that same thought that you're surrounded by this big arc that you've created. So for those of you who've just joined us, the thought or the theme for today is that a thought is a being that is as real or more real even than an action. The thoughts that we think actually have forms, and it's these forms that create our actions. So what we've just done in this last exercise is we've created a thought form of this arc, and that has been expressed in an action. We're going to now create another thought form. Each exercise that we do will have a specific thought form. We're going to do the sun prayer, and the thought form that we have will be very familiar to you. It's the form that energy streams up into the space from this solar plexus center in the body. Energy streams up. Let's do that, exactly that gesture with the hands to really create that thought in a more vivid way. So streaming up into the space. And just do it a couple of times so that it really becomes alive for you. One more time. Streaming up into the space. Okay, so that's what the thought that we need to keep in our minds, and that streaming up starts from there. It will carry the body up with it. Take the arms up. And energy streams upwards from that center into the space. Take the hands down and look in. Take the right foot back, form the base with your legs. From the solar plexus, once again, think that thought. And energy streams up into the space. Come into the plank. Knees, chest and face down. Slide forwards and open into the cobra. Push into the triangle. Right foot forward, good base. From the solar plexus center, streaming up into the space. Left foot forward and look in. Come right the way up from the solar plexus center, streaming upwards into the space. And take the hands down, breath flowing freely. So we'll continue with the same thought. One of the things that can happen is that the more we think a thought, the more alive, the more powerful it becomes. That's the same with any thought about anything in life. Left foot back, growing into both legs. Think that thought, but from the solar plexus. And energy streams upwards into the space, carrying the upper body up. Come into the plank. Knees, chest and face down. Slide forwards and open into the cobra. Push into downward dog. Good length. Left foot forward. Free breath. From that solar plexus, and energy streams upwards. Right foot forward and look in. Come right the way up and grow. And take the hands down. So the more vivid the thought becomes, the more power it has to take expression through the body. And what we actually feel is that the movements start to happen more naturally. The thought comes into our so-called energy body or etheric body. The thought comes in and it gives us a feeling almost like a memory or like a habit or something, a feeling that we actually know that movement. Our body knows the movement. It almost forms a bit like a muscle memory, something that becomes part of us. Let's stay with that same thought. From the center, a movement streams up into the space above. Hands together. Take the arms up. From the center, we stream up and flow into the space. Come forwards and look in. Take the right foot back, forming a good base. Think that thought of streaming upwards and opening. Come into the plank. Knees, chest and face down. Slide forwards, streaming upwards. Come into the triangle. Right foot forward. And from the center, streaming actively up. Left foot forward, looking in. Come right the way up and grow. Streaming upwards. And hands down. Hands together. Coming up. Free breath. From the center, streaming up. Take the hands forwards and look in. Left foot back. Forming a good base. From the center, streaming actively up. Come into the plank. Knees, chest and face down. Slide up into the cobra. Form the triangle. Bottom forms the peak. Left foot forward. Come right the way back up. And take the other foot forward. And come right the way up into the standing position. Take the hands down. We'll do one more round and we'll do it faster this time, which means that the body is more likely to take over. Let's try and keep the thought, even though the body is being more challenged, the thought of streaming up into the space from the solar plexus, that's the thing that we hold all the way through, regardless of whether our body's struggling or not. Hands together. Right the way up high, streaming up. Come forwards. Right foot back. Stay with that thought of streaming actively up. Come into the plank. Knees, chest and face down. Open into the cobra, streaming upwards. Good triangle. Right foot forward. From the solar plexus, prepare your thought. Stream upwards. Other foot forward and look in. Come right the way up and stream up. And hands down. Hands together. Right the way up, streaming actively up. Looking forward. Left foot back. Streaming up into the half moon. Come into the plank. Knees, chest and face down. Open right into the cobra. Come into downward dog. Left foot forward. Streaming actively up. Right foot forward. Come right the way up and grow. And take the hands down. Okay. We'll come to a more still position now with a different thought. This time we have a thought of center and periphery. I'm going to make this cross shape, the St. Andrew's cross. And the center of the cross, you can put your fingers there just so you know exactly where it is, just at the base of your breastbone, just below the heart center but above the solar plexus. That's the center. The hands with fingers reaching out, they form the periphery. You can turn your hands slightly backwards so the little fingers come towards each other, the palms face backwards. Other way, yeah, that's it. Let the breath flow. Right, create your thought. This cross has a center where the diagonals intersect, and it has a periphery. The limbs move out to the periphery. Stay with that thought. With your eyes, you can just look gently down onto the floor. And now come up onto your toes. But stay with that thought. The cross has a centre and a periphery. Come back down again. So we're going to stay with this centre. We'll move slightly up to the heart centre, and we're going to come to the shoulder stand. So can you come down onto your mat? So we'll do the shoulder stand twice. We'll develop the thought. The first time our thought will be a thought of energy gathering inwards at the heart center. If you imagine how when you have a tree, all the different fluids and minerals gather in through the roots, and they gather at the base of the tree. You can have a picture like this, that nourishing energy gathers itself in to this point right here at the heart center. That's the thought that you can picture. Let's come just into a half shoulder stand, the starting position, like this, whenever you're ready. On the ground, you have the head, shoulders, and the upper arms. So they're a bit like the roots of your tree. Your picture is that nourishing energy gathers itself inwards in a very gentle way, centering at the heart center. Just stay with that thought. Then come back down. Just come back up to a sitting position. And that was a preparatory stage. We're going to develop our thought. We have the analogy of the tree again. All the fluid and the minerals, they gather in through the roots, and then from there they flow upwards through the trunk, and that's what helps the tree to grow. So we can have the same thing now in the shoulder stand. We're going to pause in that half shoulder stand. We'll picture our energy gathering at the heart center, and then from there the energy flows upwards, and it will carry the body up with it. So that's the thought that we need to really think in a clear and vivid way. When you're ready, come back into the half shoulder stand to begin with. Just take the hands to your back and start thinking the first thought. Energy flows inwards through the body's roots, arms and head and shoulders, and it gathers at the heart center. Don't try to force the body up prematurely. Remain the real being, the real thing is the thought. The activity is only an expression of that. Now we can develop our thought, and that is that out of the heart center, energy flows upwards. It flows right up through the spine and then up through the legs, and as it does so, it carries the body up into a more straight line. This will happen just as a natural expression of the thought that we think. Things that we don't need to force. Body unfolds. Breath flowing. Don't worry whether you're not very high up. The main thing is that we think the thought in a vivid way. Come back down again. Come back up to a sitting position. The next position is the fish. And the thought that I would like you to picture this time is of a great big arc, like that, like a big rainbow or something that's arching over the top of you. When we think that arc, when we picture it in our minds, then what happens is that in the fish, the body can respond to it. I'll just show you. I picture this great big arc going from my feet to my head. And now my body can lift up and open itself to that arc. I carry on thinking that big arc arching over me. Okay, so would you like to come into the starting position? You can take your arms right under your body, your palms side by side, and then rest your bottom on your forearms and straighten out your legs. Breath flowing freely. So to start with, you once again create your thought like a rainbow arching over you from the direction of your feet to your head. Free breath. So when you're ready, you can come right up like this onto your elbows, and then you can open up your rib cage, open up your chest, drop the head back. You're answering to that arc. Carry on picturing the arc in your mind. Free breath. The body answers to the pictured arch. And then you can come back down and relax again. So, can you come up to a sitting position? Like this. I'm going to come to the head to knee over one leg and then do the version with the twist. And what we have in these positions in terms of a thought is that on the one hand, we've got the ground beneath us. We've got terra firma, firm ground. On the other hand, we've got a vast space above us. We've got two opposing dimensions that we can become aware of in this movement. So first of all, just become aware of these legs on the ground. Let's think of that. We have firm ground underneath us. Stay with that thought. You can feel the legs and the sitting bones firmly on the ground. If you need to sit on a cushion in order to get that knee down, then that's fine. And take your arm, the same
arm as the bent leg, take that behind your back. Let's take the straightened arm now into that space up above and ahead of you. So we can have this thought: on the one hand, firm ground beneath, on the other hand, open space above that hand and ahead of that hand. Free breath. Let's glide forwards into that space beyond. The hand is moving out into something very distant, something beyond. The legs stay anchored on the firm ground. That stays where it is, that's right here. The hand moves out into something beyond, something free and unknown. Right the way out. Okay, come back again. Let's change sides. So we're staying with this thought that we have two opposite dimensions. Firm ground underneath. You can feel the legs and the sitting bones. Bent side has the hand behind the back. Straightened side has that hand out into the distance. You can grow outwards towards that hand. Two opposing dimensions, firm ground underneath, and then something free, something opening out, something new beyond. Body grows into the new, into the unknown. Legs stay firm on the ground. Come back up again. Streaming up. Take the hand down. Change the legs around again. This time we'll add in the twist. I'll just show you what this looks like, because it's one we don't do quite as often. But we'll have the same idea. We have on the one hand the sense that there is the ground, the thought that there is ground. On the other hand, this time we're going to have more of a thought of openness above us. So as we grow forwards, we'll twist to look above, like that. Okay, so just come into the starting position, taking the hand directly out in front. So we've got the thought on the one hand of the ground, and then you can grow forwards from your hips and you can twist, opening the rib cage up and just lower that hand down. You can take the elbow inside the leg if it will come inside, and look up above you. Let's stay with that thought. We have on the one hand firm ground underneath us. On the other hand, open space above. If you stay with that thought for a short time, you can allow the body to adapt itself to that thought, that different bits of it belong in these different dimensions. It's part of it on the ground, part of it facing upwards. Straighten up again. And take the hand down. Change over to the other side. So we can have, first of all, the thought that there is ground underneath us. Supportive ground. Take the bent arm behind the back, straightened one out in front. And our other thought is there is open space. You can glide forwards into that open space. Free breath. And then you can twist to look up into the open space above you. Let the elbow come down inside your leg, but keep that opening of your chest and shoulders so that you turn to look up towards the ceiling. And we'll hold the position and stay with that thought. There is ground firmly underneath us, supporting us. And we open up to look up at the free space above us. Two halves of the body participating in these two opposite dimensions of life. Stay with that thought. The body is an expression of the thought. Straighten up again, come right the way up. Stretching actively up. And take the hand down. So, next one we'll come to is the crow. So the crow can be quite a difficult position, but perhaps this can give you an example or an experience of how if we have a very well placed thought, then the movement starts to happen more easily. So the crow is a position that requires a lot of tightening right in here in the pelvis. And at the same time, it requires a sense of freedom of the head and a sense of space beyond. It's similar to the contrast we had in the last exercise. So let's start with a preparatory movement that will give us, that can express that thought. You take your, actually if you have your feet a little bit apart, maybe hip width apart, and take your arms in between your knees like that. So the upper arms are right inside the knees. Now, our thought is that we're tightening the pelvis and freeing the head. So you can start to direct your sitting bones backwards and also direct your thighs upwards towards your abdomen. That brings a tightness, and at the same time you stretch and lengthen forwards, and your head and your hands look right forwards. So stay with the thought that we have again two opposing dimensions: tightness in the pelvis, freedom beyond the head. The hands point towards that free space. Okay, just come back again. So that paves the way, that actually prepares our thought. Now I'd like you to just watch the crow before you do it, so that you can see how the actual crow is just an expression of that same thought. So if we really get the thought, then the movement happens more easily. With my bottom, I keep directing it backwards. With my head, I'm looking forwards into the space, and what I'm doing is then just transferring the body gradually forwards, always looking out ahead, so I don't do a nose dive down. Bottom is directed backwards, head looks out into the distance. So if you'd like to have a go then, building it up in that way. So make sure your upper arms are inside your knees. Your hands are spread out like that, crow's feet, diagonally towards each other, so that you get little ledges of your elbows. So it's like that, the starting position. Hands spread out on the ground, elbows directed out sideways, your knees on top of your upper arms. And then once you've got yourself in that starting position, you then lift your bottom up and you think of your bottom directing backwards, your head forwards. You just start to transfer your body forwards onto your hands, looking out ahead. Okay, so I'm seeing people jumping, trying to jump. It doesn't work. If you try and jump up, you're not going to find your balance, because what you need is a real strength to hold you. And the strength is not in the arms. The strength is actually here, particularly it's in the lower back and your abdomen. So you need to build that up, and you just have another look. First of all, you come onto this position. Now the question is, how do we get onto the hands, off the feet? We can't do it by jumping and hoping for the best, but rather if you think that you gradually transfer, that's why you look forwards. One foot can come off, gradually the other foot comes off. So it's a gradual transfer. And when you're in the position, you're tightening your thighs right up into your tummy, and you're looking out ahead. The head is free. Have one more go. Elbows out sideways. Hands firmly on the ground. And then take the knees onto the upper arms. And you can start to transfer forwards, looking out ahead. Really slowly, keep the breath flowing. Slow, slow transfer forwards. So we're going to finish off then with one other position that in its full form it's quite difficult. This one is called the half diamond. And I'll show you the movement first, then I'll tell you what the thought is that we have to think. It's a very intense stretch of the thighs. I'm starting off, just got my feet, actually they're slightly crossed. Have your knees quite wide apart. If they're too close together, it's more difficult, so take them quite wide apart. Now, I'll show you how to come down. You lower yourself gradually down, elbows onto the ground, and you have to arch your back. You don't collapse in, but you arch your back quite actively. Then you can take the head down, then you can gradually lower the shoulders down until you're on the ground like that. So the thought that we think in this position is that we are lying on the earth, looking up at the universe. Okay. Thinking that thought changes our experience in the position. So you can do it, you don't have to come all the way down, you just come down in those steps that I showed you very gradually, so that you allow those thighs to stretch, and you just stop when you get to your maximum stage. First of all, make sure that you're sitting on your feet with your knees quite wide apart. Take the hands onto the floor next to your feet, and now start to lower yourself backwards, breath flowing, always doing it gently, little by little. Take one elbow onto the ground, and then take the other elbow onto the ground. And now at this point, you need to tilt your pelvis a bit so you can arch your lower back. You're actively lifting your lower back up. The next step is to lower the top of the head onto the floor. If you can, don't force anything, don't tear anything, just take it step by step, letting the breath flow. And if you're able to come any further, you can slide the back of the head backwards and let the shoulder blades lower onto the floor, hands facing upwards. So this is the half diamond, and the thought that we think is that we are lying on the earth, looking up at the universe. And those of you who are in the full position can try taking the arms right up above the head, palms together, fingers together, so you stretch and lengthen right through the body. Stay with the same thought though, you're lying on the earth, looking up at the universe. And take the hands back down by your sides again. Now the tricky thing is coming out of it. You need to push on your elbows the same way, then you're up onto your hands the same way that you came into it. If you get stuck, just roll over onto one side. Okay, and we can just finish off in the child's pose. Just come up to a sitting position. So I just want to remind you to finish off of the thought that I started with at the beginning, because it's a thought that we can take right into our lives. It applies to everything that we do. And the idea that we've had throughout the session is that the thought itself is more real than the action. The thought itself is an actual existence. It's like a form of light. And that thought that we think is what determines the outcome of the action that we do. The more clearly we think it, the more smoothly the action can happen.